Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. The new college football AP Top 25 poll is out after we capped off the final week of the regular season. And man, oh man, did rivalry week deliver. Here's a look at your new top 10 teams. Buckeyes stay in the top 10 despite their loss to rival Michigan, but they suffer some punishment, falling to 7 in the latest rankings. Texas made their case to the voters after defeating Texas A&M, so the Longhorns do move up 1 spot to 2, as you see there. The rest of the teams in the top 5 all move up 1 spot this week, and it's Penn State, Notre Dame, and Georgia to round out the top 5. Out of the top 10, you'll notice Miami, as we show you a look now at 11 through 20. Hurricanes fall 6 spots to 14 after their loss to Syracuse. Elsewhere in the ACC, Clemson falls 6 spots as well, but they're still in the top 20 at 18 after their loss to South Carolina. The Tigers will square off in that ACC championship game against SMU. And a look now at the rest of the teams that round out the new AP Top 25 poll. Syracuse, the Orange were 28th last week in voting points, and after their upset win against Miami, they have now entered the top 25. We're going to break this all down for you as we welcome you to CBS Sports HQ. I'm Jordan Giorgio, and joining me from afar is Emory Hunt and Brad Crawford. Gentlemen, great to see you. Let's begin with Miami, who moves down to 14 in the latest poll. Hurricanes just playing with fire all season long. They got burnt twice. Yesterday was the last straw when they fell to Syracuse. As a result, Clemson now going to that ACC championship game. As I mentioned, they take on SMU. But, Brad, does this Miami loss also open up the door for a 3-loss Alabama to get in, and maybe some of the other teams in the SEC like a Tennessee to jump up?
I think it definitely does. In my latest playoff projection, I've got Miami outside of that top 12, Alabama and South Carolina moving up as the 11 and 12 seeds. Now, South Carolina would be the first team out if that scenario stands. Most importantly for Miami, there's no path to get back in that playoff mix. So Tuesday night, Jordan, if the committee lands the Hurricanes outside the top 12, that's it for Mario Cristobal's team. And right now, the ACC looks like a one-bid league, because unless Clemson beats SMU, SMU's going to the playoff, and nobody else from that conference is. So Alabama and South Carolina really benefited from Miami losing.
Yeah, Brad with a little tease there. Emory projecting his final CFP rankings. I'll let you respond.
Yeah, listen, if it's all about the eye test and we talk about Miami playing with fire, like Georgia's sitting there flaming right now because they've been playing with fire for a good part of the season. And I still feel like with the Miami offense and with Cam Ward and how they can make things dynamic and come back in these ball games, I wouldn't necessarily keep a 2-loss Miami team outside of the postseason, but they make it hard for themselves, not only because they lost the games they lost, but they lost late. And so had this loss against Syracuse happened, in week 6, we'd be having the same conversation about Miami that we're having about South Carolina or about Georgia, where we just kind of ignore their losses. But at the end of the day, I know you have to just look at the eye test, but at some point, when you have a 12-team playoffs, you're going to, covering the FCS like I do, you're going to have teams that have multiple losses in the postseason. So we can't have a 12-team playoff but still carry in a 14 playoff mindset.
Emory, I'm glad you brought up South Carolina because I do want to talk about them, and I don't want to ignore their losses, but we have to mention South Carolina does move up to 13 in the latest AP poll. How dangerous really is this Gamecocks team? They've been battle tested. They've kind of felt like a whole new team since those back-to-back losses to Ole Miss and Alabama. Where do you stand right now with South Carolina?
Brad knows this. We talked about this late last night. I'm all on for South Carolina because if we're talking about the eye test, then South Carolina really has one loss because they got a phantom block in the back against LSU, and I don't know why Lenora Sellers threw the ball in the second row of the stands against Alabama. They should have beat Alabama too. So, but if you're watching South Carolina, you're like, man, they now have the vaunted tag of this is a team that nobody wants to play, right? Because nobody wants to play this South Carolina team, and you see what they have done over the last couple of weeks or so, or the last month. This team is playing its best ball heading into the postseason, and if there were a 3-loss team to put into this 12-team playoff, my vote would go with South Carolina because of how strong they're playing on both sides of the ball.
I have to agree totally. I mean, South Carolina right now, outside of Notre Dame with 10 straight wins, South Carolina's won 6 straight as the hottest team in college football, and they've done it against 3 ranked teams during that stretch. They blew out A&M by 24 points earlier last month. They beat Missouri on a last-second drive from Lenora Sellers, and then on 3rd and 16, Sellers scores from 20 yards out to beat Clemson. So we're talking about South Carolina potentially having a regular season finale win against the eventual ACC champion. How would you leave South Carolina out of the playoff if Clemson goes on next week and beats SMU and is one of those 4 Power 4 conference champions? South Carolina's resume is great right now. The only thing holding the Gamecocks back, as you mentioned, Emory, is that 2-point loss in Tuscaloosa.
That's a great point, gentlemen. Well, let's move on here to the Big Ten. Ohio State drops in the latest rankings, still in that top 10, but they fall to 7. Right now, Brad, it seems like Buckeye fans just punching air after suffering another loss to their rival in Michigan. But do you think once fans really realize that they most likely make the playoff without having to play an extra game against Oregon in that Big Ten championship game, that this is actually the best case scenario for the Buckeyes? What do you think?
Yeah, surprisingly, Ohio State's likely going to get a first-round home game now because of that loss to Michigan. They don't have to deal with playing Oregon next week in Indianapolis. They're going to have some extra time to prepare for that first-round game. But at any rate, Jordan, 4 consecutive losses to Michigan for Ohio State. Ryan Day now undoubtedly on the hot seat because he just cannot get it done. And this was not a good Michigan team. Michigan can't score. Michigan had like 1 scoring drive the entire game yesterday, and Ohio State gave them, the rest of their scoring possession. So Ohio State, for whatever reason, has this mind block against the Wolverines and can't get it done. I do think that we'll see a better Ohio State team in the playoff, and Ryan Day and this Buckeyes group is still very, very dangerous.
All right, Emory, I do want to talk to you about Ryan Day because Brad just brought it up, undoubtedly on the hot seat. At this point, fans obviously furious with their head coach dropping another game to their biggest rival. Now 1-4 against Michigan, Ryan Day is. Is it truly championship or bust for Ryan Day, Emory?
Unfortunately, I do feel like that's the case because the expectation for Ohio State is to win 10 games or more. The expectations for Ryan Day when he took over the head coaching job is to win Big Ten championships or more. And now, judging by what we've seen in this NIL era, to go along with already what the expectations were at Ohio State and the expectations when you took over this football team, you have to win a championship. And in the process of all of those expectations, you can't lose to Michigan more than once. And so that doesn't bode well for historical references of coaches at Ohio State that have lost consistently to Michigan. So, yes, he is on the hot seat. And when you add in what happened post-game, where he's just standing there, we had a great camera shot of him just asking a guy, after you saw like the brawl of the wild on the field, say, hey, what happened? Like, what do you mean what happened? You've been out there for 3 hours. What do you mean what happened?
Yeah.
And so that doesn't bode well for Ryan Day.
Right. And I think the whole overarching theme has been, if you can't get it done with this roster, this $20 million roster, they say. Also, Michigan was out 2 of their best players, Colston Loveland and Will Johnson, weren't even on that field. So Buckeyes fans not happy waking up this morning, regardless of still being able to make that playoff. All right, lastly here, Brad, we have to talk about the Big 12 because things have just been absolutely wild down the stretch of the season for this conference. Please break it all down for us. Where are we at right now so we can make sense of this entire Big 12 conference?
Last night's results gave us Arizona State and Iowa State. Arizona State's one of the hottest teams in the country. Obviously, right now, probably the Big 12 front runner heading into next week's game at AT&T Stadium. Iowa State beating Kansas State, holding off the Wildcats, coupled with BYU's win over Houston in the late-night game, secured the Cyclone spot. So those wanting to see Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter in the Big 12 championship game, it's not going to happen. Holiday Bowl probably is the destination for Colorado. Meanwhile, the Big 12's playoff representative will be the Sun Devils or the Cyclones. And I think right now Arizona State's the favorite.
What a world. Did not have this matchup on my bingo card to start the season here. Big 12 championship is set. Arizona State taking on Iowa State, as you mentioned. Well, elsewhere in the Big Ten, which is on CBS this year, December 7th, the stage is set for the Big Ten championship game. It's Penn State taking on the #1 team in the nation in Oregon. We will have coverage right here on CBS Sports HQ. The game on Big CBS, or you can stream on Paramount Plus. Kickoff slated for 8 p.m. from Indianapolis. Quick break for us, but more to come when we return. We turn our focus to next week with the college football playoff rankings. We showed you the latest AP poll, but how will the final college football playoff committee rank these teams next week? We give you our predictions next.